With .NET 6, we can now provide our own defaults with the LINQ extension methods such as FirstOrDefault. Let's check it out. Here we have a list of students and their grades or their scores, and we want to pick the first student. Let's assume that this is ordered by the first finisher, so within an exam, the first person who finished, and we want to check what their score is. If we cannot find a student or nobody's finished, we'll say no student found. And if we do find a student, we'll find the first one and we want to see the person who finished the quickest, what is their score? And we check their score and we print it out. So let's run that. So here we get the score of 94. Great. Now let's assume we've changed this up a little bit. What we do now is we say, well, we only actually care about the score. We're not linking a person to it. And this, let's assume that this actually changed to say, let's select the score. Right. And now we've got a list of integers coming through here in the order at which they're finished. And we want to say first student score, which will be an integer. And now we want to say, okay, if there are no students, we could say what's the default for an integer? We could say 0. Otherwise, we've got first student score. We put it in like that. So at first glance, this seems good. And let's run it. And here we get the same result. Since we've changed this to use integers, we've got a bit of a problem. Over here, this line, if the first student actually gets a score of 0, because let's just say they didn't write anything and within 10 minutes they left the exam room, and we'll actually come in here and print out no students found. So 0 in this case has an ambiguous meaning. 0 as in the default because we couldn't find anyone, and 0 as in the first student score was 0. So now we are able to actually provide defaults. So we could say -1. That's a new feature. And now we have the ability to say -1 over here. And what this does is it says, if I can't find anyone, use the default, and we provide the default rather than letting it be the default of the data type. So in this case, you cannot get a score of -1. The worst you can do is get a 0. In which case we're guaranteed that if the code comes in here, we have no students. If the first student has 0, they'll come in here and print it out. We still have the ability to add predicates, for instance. So here I could say where x is less than 50, for instance, and I still want to return a -1 if nobody is found. I can still do that. And as you would expect, we get the same functionality for the other OR defaults, for instance, LastOrDefault, SingleDefault. It's consistent across them too with the default value. That's it. It's quite a simple one, but it does provide us the ability not to have to check .any before we do the OR default, for instance.